Hello and welcome back to the FEZ show. We've got a lot to talk about today. We've got to do a small little recap on the Sao Paulo E-Prix, but we're mainly going to be looking ahead to the Berlin E-Prix, and we've got a man in the show today that is going to be in Berlin, Mr. Pickering. You looking forward to it?
Jack, you're too kind. No, yeah, I'm so looking forward to being back in the Formula E paddock. For those who are new, I spent most of last year in the paddock for Formula E, just being on site, and I have missed it. Sitting at home watching these races, it's a bit like I want to be there, but no, and also I'm looking forward to it because, as some people may remember, this is a race that I missed last year. I went off to Italy in the week that this was on and decided to miss Berlin. So yeah, looking forward to spending. Well, it will be my first time properly in Germany, and it will be at Tempelhof Formula E, which I'm really excited about. It's also going to be a fantastic race.
Yeah, talk about dedication, right?
Races, there's two of them.
Yeah, there's two of them. Talk about dedication, though, right? You know, obviously, all those races that you went to last year, but decided to go on a holiday for one of them. You know, just like dedication to the cause. Just no, I can't be asked for Berlin, but he's making up for it this year. We've also got the wonderful Ed Hunter in the show today. How are you?
Oh, good. Thanks, Jack. I'm not going to be in Berlin, but I will be in Milton Keynes commentating on go-karts for the first time. So I probably got some future Formula E drivers going to be there. Who knows? But yeah, so I did worry a bit there, Pico, when you said, "Oh, I was sitting at home watching those races." I thought you were going to go into Nicky Lauda spiel, like from Rush, where he's like, "Oh, look, sitting at home watching you win those races while I was fighting for my life," or something like that. But no, okay. I'm glad you didn't do that.
Sitting at home watching Nicky and Vernon present all these races. I'm not having it.
Well, we'll leave it there because we don't want to say anything too much more.
No, I just want to go on the record. I do love Nicky and Vernon.
Yeah, we do.
Vernon is, I think, going to quit at the end of the season as well. He announced that quite recently. So they're sad to see. I always enjoyed Vernon's work, and Nicky we know since the beginning, so she's always very nice to us, Nicky.
It means there's a presenter role going, and me and Pico will be fighting for it in Monaco. When we get there, you know, we'll be black eyes because at Monaco we will.
I'll have a word with them this weekend.
Yeah, so he's going to try and jump the queue. I see what's happened, but anyway, right. Let's talk Formula E because Jaguar, right? Sao Paulo. Just a little recap if you've forgotten, right? It was the Jaguar 1-2-3 effectively. Mitch Evans winning the race in the Jaguar, and then the Envision Power Jaguar in Nick Cassidy was in second, and then Sam Bird in third. And Pico, I'll come to you on this first. Jaguar, we've been talking about, they've been a team that had the pace, they just didn't have the luck, right, in the first opening races. And then, you know, it all came together for them in Sao Paulo, really. And even Buemi, if you think about Buemi, you know, he got punted in the second lap and still recovered to P10. You're just thinking now, okay, Jaguar probably asserted their dominance, and if this can continue, then Jaguar can really fight their way up the championship and catch the likes of Jake Dennis and Pascal Wehrlein pretty quickly.
Oh yeah, it was an absolutely fantastic race from Jaguar. It's nice to see them do well because we've seen the potential over the course of the season, but instances like in Hyderabad and everything like that have just meant that they just haven't got the points that they really should have done this season. It's going to be interesting this weekend because I think historically the Jags have not done fantastically well around Berlin before. I can't remember a race where they've. I don't think they've even stood on the podium in Tempelhof. I could be wrong. But especially Sam, I don't think is a huge fan of Tempelhof. And it'll be interesting to see whether Sam does well, because I don't think when Sam had his power streak last year, two of the races that I missed were Sam's best result of the year and Sam's best qualifying of the year. So if Sam Bird has a terrible weekend this weekend, I am the unlucky mascot for Sam Bird, which is going to be an interesting thing to see. But yeah, I think Jag, we'll see if they're there or thereabout this weekend, but I think this will be a weekend that probably suits more the Porsche or the DSs, I think, would be the stronger argument for this weekend.
Yeah, I wouldn't tell Sam that though. I wouldn't go and brag about that to Sam because he'll just say,
I'll let him
get
know
out,
at the end of the year.
get out. Yeah, let him know at the end of the year. Like, oh, by the way, every time I've turned up, you've done badly, and every time I've not been there, you've done great. So, yay! Yeah, don't tell him that because he'll kick you out before you won't even make Sunday's race. You'll get there Sunday morning, pass revoked. But yeah, Ed, Jaguar. We always thought that they were a team, that we thought they were just unlucky. But do you think now they've built this platform, technically a 1-2-3, that they can now push and try and bring that confidence into Berlin?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And Pico, by the way, he said he said he wasn't sure if Jag had finished on the podium before. I think Evans got a third place in season 7 on Saturday, I think, just behind Degrassi and Mortara, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong on that.
That's feasible. All I remember from Jaguar and Berlin, and I apologise to all Mitch Evans fans, is him not moving and then being punted by Ede Mortara.
Yeah, but anyway, he did get one on the podium the day before, I think. But anyway, in terms of Jaguar's current form, certainly Sao Paulo was definitely what they needed to get their season back on track. And I felt very sorry for them up to Sao Paulo because they just had so much horrendous luck. Evans especially showing some amazing pace and never was quite able to deliver on it. And I do think Sao Paulo, because it was a race where so many long straights are all slipstreaming each other and saving energy, I think in the end they had Van Dorn for quite a lot of the race, who was creating a bit of a hole in the air in front of them and allowing them to sort of break later, lifting coast and save energy behind him. So I think Jaguar, I definitely think the situation played to their advantage, but they certainly the car certainly was working well, and Porsche, I think, really fumbled things in Sao Paulo, to be honest, and created that big opportunity for Jaguar. So, and Nick Cassidy really has been the form man at the moment, just consistently getting that car into second place, it seems, every race, or on the podium at least, as we saw in Cape Town as well. So I certainly think Nick Cassidy is sort of the dark horse getting there. But if Mitch Evans can start a winning run, then I definitely think Jaguar can be a big factor in this championship as we get into near the second half of the season.
The thing is, though, right, and this is Formula E in a nutshell, is that we talk about this and we're like, oh yeah, this Jaguar, right, they've been so good. But we said this about Porsche and Andretti, Pico, at the beginning of the season. And we were expecting this run. And I know we've spoken to Jake Dennis, and there'll be a future edition of the magazine where I spoke to him, and he said that the teams have already caught us up 3 races into the season. And he's like, I've expected the teams to have already closed that gap. And it looks like those teams, have closed that gap. But what is surprising, because it's Formula E and the nature that it's Formula E, I suppose, with the 1 day-ish format and qualifying being so, not much practice time. You've got half an hour then in the morning, and then there's not much time to change things before qualifying, because qualifying is pretty quick after FP2, is the way the tables swing, because they were so competitive. Now they just, Dennis hasn't even finished the last couple of races, and he's been punted out in the bad qualifying, and it just leads to a bad result. And that could happen to Jaguar in Berlin, right? And you said it there, if they don't qualify well, then all of a sudden, racing on Saturday and Sunday will be very difficult. So talk to me about sort of Andretti and how they bounce back from this, because such a great start, and all of a sudden it's just all come crumbling down.
Well, yeah, Jake Dennis has had the last it's been the last 3 races have been shocking. I think Hyderabad, he got hit by Rene Rast at the end of the race, and that DNF'd him. Cape Town, he had to serve a drive-through penalty for power overuse, I think, and then in
tire pressure. It was the tire pressure.
Yeah, tire pressure.
Okay, Evans was overuse. Okay. And then in Sao Paulo, something happened with Dan's car and it hit. Jake broke his suspension. And yet we're still talking about Jake Dennis second in the championship. I think it shows how good that first part of the season was. Yes, it hasn't really gone well since, but he's kind of shown that his potential, the car's potential, it's there. and they can carry that on. Yeah, they've had a hiccup, but the thing is, this is Formula E. Formula E is super competitive, and and if you try predicting it, you are a moron. Welcome to the Morons podcast. And so yeah, we have no idea. Look at Sao Paulo. It's so close. The top three finished within a half a second of each other. That's absolutely insane. And
the only thing, though, I'd say to that is that the top three were the same powertrain. It's not like it was the top three were different powertrains. It wasn't like it was an Andretti and, you know, a DS and a Jaguar. It was the same powertrain, which for me just showed the potential dominance, though, of Jaguar. Potentially,
yeah, but we'll have to see different folks for different blokes, different circuits for whatever. I probably butchered the saying. I'll look it up. I've got a little book of sayings. I'll look it up afterwards. Yeah, but yeah, well, I mean, as I said earlier, I don't think this is a circuit that will suit Jaguar. It hasn't historically, but the thing is, we're in a completely new car, completely new powertrains. So who knows going into this weekend? But yeah, I think the potential is there. And also, when we end the season, like we got Rome. Rome is such a dominant track for Jag. I think they won their first race there. Mitch flew through from 9th and 5th, I think, last year to win on both days. And so they will have those days where they are so dominant. But Berlin, I don't think, is going to be one of them. And I think that Porsche could, and Andretti, I think this is when they need to bounce back, especially for Porsche in front of a home crowd.
Indeed. We'll talk about that later. But Ed, for me then, if you're Andretti, right, you've got Jake Dennis who's had such a strong start to the season. And okay, he's not picking up points, but Andre Lotterer hasn't really done the business since his move to Andretti. And I suppose that might dampen spirits a little bit more. Like, you've got one car that, you know, looked like, you know, they're going to fight for the championship, still could fight for the championship, but, you know, has had these 3 bad races, but they've plummeted in the team standings because Lotterer has struggled as well to get something out of that car. Does that make things for them potentially even more frustrating?
Oh, definitely. And you do get the sense that Andre Lotterer is a man maybe on the way out of Formula E, because we've always said for last season, a few seasons before, his qualifying was always one of the really strong things about Andre Lotterer in his performances, and his qualifying's been really shocking past couple of races. He had a decent race in Mexico where he finished, I think, top 5, even though his engineer said that there was an issue with the powertrain or something, and he just decided there was a safety car that cooled down. He got to the end and got some good points. But since then, he's never looked anywhere near as comfortable. And he's just constantly in the back. In Sao Paulo, he got in an incident, I think, on the very, very first lap, and that basically where he came to a halt. And I think that sort of got going again, but it sort of defined his race. He never really recovered from that. And yeah, as well as having to miss Jakarta to go do a World Endurance Championship with Porsche Penske, interestingly enough. But David Beckman, I think, is going to take over for him for Jakarta, who's doing the rookie test with Porsche, the factory Porsche team, in Berlin after the race. But yeah, it definitely feels like yeah, it's not, if Dennis was getting knocked out or Lotterer was banking like top 4s and top 5s, it would soften the blow, at least in the team's championship. But they don't even really have that. So Andretti is have kind of just been relying completely on Jake Dennis. And the problem there is that Jake Dennis has his typical Jake Dennis luck. We got a friend of ours who runs the Jake Dennis Struggles account, and it seems they've been having a field day the last couple of races, unfortunately, with the horrific fortune he's had both on and off the circuit, with flights being delayed and all sorts of things. So yeah, if anyone can get things back on track, it is Jake Dennis, though. So I don't think it's all over yet for Andretti. I think if they have a clean race, then they can be right back in it.
I want to talk about DS Penske before we move on to sort of Berlin. Kind of a weird one, Pico, because when we saw Van Dorn and Jean-Eric Vergne as teammates, we thought, wow, in a Penske, right? In a Penske, like, this looked unstoppable. This looked like Man City, right? Effectively, you couldn't get more Man City than Jean-Eric Vergne and Stoffel Van Dorn in a team together with a powertrain partner as Penske. So have you been surprised? They're getting better, like, for sure. Like, the first couple of races of the season is bad, but it's kind of slow. Like they don't seem to be hitting the heights of Jaguar. They don't seem to be as quick as Jaguar, but Van Dorn got the pole position, and it was probably the first moment of brilliance that we've seen from Van Dorn really this season. But again, it just faded away. Like, what do you think of DS so far?
I don't think they've been too bad. I think they've won a race with Jev in Hyderabad, and yeah, Stoff. I'd say Stoff hasn't been as good as we thought he was going to be. I think hopefully it will come with time, and because we know how good a driver he is. We saw last year he absolutely swept the field basically to win the championship. But yeah, at the moment it just hasn't worked out. I think DS they starting to find their feet because they had the first few races from hell. So now that they've started to find their feet, Jev's won, Stoff's got a pole, and they've been there or thereabout. I do think that we'll see them get there or thereabout. As I said earlier, they're one of my picks this weekend because we know how good DS, when they were previously under the Techeetah banner, have done at Berlin before. So we will see this weekend, but I feel like it's a circuit that will suit their car. But yeah, with Stoff, it's a new team, it's a new environment. Whereas with Jev, most of the team have come over from DS into the Penske outfit, so it's more or less the same team. It's just you've got a few different people here and there. So that's why Jev has been better so far this season. And now that they've got to grips with the powertrain, I reckon that Stoff, we've seen him, he got a pole. He got a pole in Sao Paulo. That's where he got the pole. Because I'll be honest, I only said he got a pole because you guys said he got a pole, and I couldn't remember where.
It was the last race, mate. It was the race we just reviewed.
4 weeks ago. Like, we're so late at doing these. I'm amazed we have what little fan base we do. Thank you for sticking with us.
Well, you're really laying into us tonight, aren't you, Pico?
I don't know. It's like Pico's having a go
back,
at us.
baby.
He's popping us. He's popping. But Ed, I suppose with DS, right? They always, I think, it's like a slow burner. That's how I see it. They've started terribly, but they got the win. They're sort of there. They finished 5th and 6th in Sao Paulo. They probably would have liked better considering Van Dorn was on pole. But you're feeling like, okay, they're beginning to get some momentum. And if Pico is right in what he's saying, that Berlin could be a strong track for him, with that being a double header, like, again, the championship could kind of turn in their favor, and it could be a big haul of points potentially for a team, and any team really, this weekend. And that could completely turn the momentum of the championship around, especially in the teams and in the drivers.
Yeah, I guess it depends how things play out. It's so difficult to predict. But yeah, their form has certainly been, especially in qualifying, with we saw Van Dorn getting that pole, we saw Jev getting the win in Hyderabad. And Jev in particular has sort of been another, along with Nick Cassidy, those two are sort of some of the darker horses in terms of the Drivers' Championship. I have a feeling that maybe it's a little bit late for Van Dorn at the moment, and he's maybe a few too many points behind. And especially when you look at Maserati with the same powertrain and how much they've struggled, they've only scored a handful of points and they've gotten all sorts of collisions. And both the DS Penske drivers have mainly done pretty well to stay out of collisions. The only one that I can think of is Jev losing his front wing in Mexico, which was all the way back in January now. Other than that, they've kept it incredibly clean in most of the races, I think, at least from what I can remember, unless there's a DS Penske in the wall that I've completely forgotten about. But yeah, it's really, we're seeing the team start to get more comfortable and starting to gel a bit. The Penske side and obviously the DS automobile side, like Pico said, it's shown what it can do at Techeetah. So yeah, if I think if the black and gold cars can qualify, they've got a much better chance of getting on the podium in Berlin than they did at Sao Paulo, because they won't be just creating a big hole in the air for others to save energy behind them. It's really track position is going to be a bit more important in Berlin. So yeah, if they can get into Superpole, then they've got every chance of getting another win and becoming a factor in this championship.
I agree. So let's talk about Berlin, right? I know we kind of touched here and there on it, but it's a doubleheader. And the last doubleheader that we had, Pico, right, in Saudi Arabia, we saw obviously the strength of the Andretti's there, right, and the Porsche powertrain, and that has created this cushion that over the next couple of races has been eaten into because of the variance of the championship, but because of that strong foothold in Saudi Arabia, it has given them a cushion. Now, this is a chance for a team potentially, or a group of teams, because obviously the same powertrain from some of the manufactured sides, to potentially put something together to try and get 2 races back to back, to try and do, what Verline did effectively in Saudi Arabia, and put 2 wins together, or get 2 podiums together, and really, because I feel like now after Berlin, we're running out of races. Hilariously, it'll be Monaco, Jakarta, and then all of a sudden it'll be Rome and London before you know it. And I feel like this could be a massive turning point in this season's championship if a team can get this weekend right.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. This weekend could be make or break. The thing is, we've also got double headers that are going to see out the season as well in Rome and London, and we've also got one in Jakarta. There is only one round of the season, I believe, left that isn't a double header, and that is Portland. Every single round from here on out is a double header.
And Monaco, right? Monaco.
Oh, Monaco. How did I forget Monaco?
Yeah, Monaco. The one that we're
going
to.
there. Yeah, I'm going there in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, how did I forget that? Yeah. So yeah, those 2, and then everyone else. But the thing is with it could like make or break the championship. Like, I think whatever happens, we will go into Sunday's race with Pascal Wehrlein as the championship leader. It's mathematically possible that Dennis, Cassidy, or Vern. Actually, no, maybe Da Costa could lead the championship going into Sunday, but it would Wehrlein would have to have an absolute shocker for that to happen. And I think the same is with Porsche as well. Scrolls down page. 41 points. It's very unlikely. I'm absolute professional, by the way. Just getting it up on the other screen. So yes, this is the chance for another team to close up. Like, Vision a second, Jag 3rd in the championship, but I'm just reading the other screen now, aren't I? But yeah, this is a chance. But the thing is that Porsche, I think they're not going to have a bad round here, because I think that Porsche, they really hit the ground running with this car, and they haven't really faltered yet. Yes, Wehrlein had a huge incident in Hyderabad in FP1.
And then he crashed out in Cape Town as well, in the back of Boemi.
Yes, he crashed out in Cape Town. But apart from that, it's kind of been a pretty good season for them. Yeah, Da Costa had a terrible Diriyah, but it's still they've just had a constantly good year. I think they've scored points in. Yeah, they've been on the podium. Well, the first time that they weren't on the podium was Sao Paulo this season. So it's the thing is that yes, other teams will close up, but it will be blimmin' difficult for to catch Porsche from just this weekend. They need to try and reel them in. It's not going to be like a yank them back, yank the cloth off the table quickly.
Yeah, but what I mean is, like, someone can crawl them back, and then with those double headers to come, it makes the championship far more open. I still suppose it's still early days in the championship, but we're getting into that middle season already, and considering that we started in January, now January felt like it was 5 minutes ago, and we've had how many races since then, and I just think it's interesting. But Pico was talking a lot about prior form, and for me, I don't know. Considering it's a new era of car, can we look at the Gen 2 era for how much? Because we've raced at Berlin forever. Can we look at Gen 2 form and go, oh yeah, they were historically good, so they'll be good in the Gen 3 era? Or do you think, that's true, that's going to happen? Or do you think because we're in that new era right now, it's anyone's game, it's whoever can get the car right, and if the car's right, they've got the best chance?
Yeah, it's interesting because Mark Preston at the very, very beginning of the season, he was saying when Porsche were doing really well the first couple of races in Mexico, especially, he said, "Oh well, Porsche were really good on the high-speed tracks last season at Mexico as well, so it's not surprising to see them winning the first couple of races." But it does seem like they've got a distinct energy efficiency advantage. Well, we saw it at Cape Town as well with the Costa and Hyderabad. They were able to make their way through the field as well. So yeah, I do think season 8 form has certainly got an impact on this season, albeit with a couple of teams like DS Penske can't really look at Dragon Penske's form. You've more got to look at the DS Techeetah sort of side of things in order to sort of see a little bit of carryover there. But again, with so many different variables and these new Hankook tires as well that are a lot harder. So it'd be interesting to see how they react with the surface of Tempelhof, that old airfield. Of course, it's a very sort of abrasive surface that always seems to catch out the teams sooner or later. I'll be interested to see who gets on top of it quickly enough. Something that Pico was saying about Porsche, I thought was kind of interesting because there was a bit of a flashpoint in Sao Paulo between Da Costa and Wehrlein, where they were both, Wehrlein found himself behind Da Costa because Da Costa was fighting for victory and messed up essentially at turn 1 and went straight on. And then Wehrlein was being asked, "Oh, can I come through?" And he was like, and their Porsche basically said no. So that's the championship leader being said, you can't overtake your teammate, which I thought was an interesting moment. Obviously, there were strategy reasons behind that because Wehrlein still had a few attack modes left to deploy. But I wonder if that's indicative of how the season's going to go. Has it shifted into becoming Da Costa's team now? And is that going to affect their title bid going forwards? Question to you, Jack, for a change. I'm going to break tradition after 90 episodes.
Mate, I wasn't listening. I don't want to ask the questions.
That shows how well this podcast goes. I'll be honest, I wasn't either, but
it was about the teammates. It was about Porsche, Da Costa and Wehrlein, because it feels a little bit like it shifted into becoming Da Costa's team now after that order they gave to Wehrlein not to overtake in Sao Paulo.
I don't think so. For me, I think Wehrlein is still. I don't think any of them are number one. I think Da Costa's got, he's got merit. He's a champion, and it's still early days. And even though Wehrlein's put that lead up, it's early to start moving away. And there's still so many races I think left to go. So I don't think Porsche are deploying any, favoritism yet. I just think they thought, now we can't tell Da Costa, because then you're already asserting Wehrlein potentially as as a number one, and their main aim for the championship. And I don't think Da Costa would have taken kindly to that. So I think they probably played it right on the day, because as Pico said, there's still quite a lot of double headers to go. And I know I said earlier that this could be pretty pivotal. I just think it's at that time of the season now where you're just trying to pick up momentum in Berlin. And we say this and if to use, it's more of a football reference than a motorsport reference, but yeah, I suppose it would probably work in F1, because if you get on a good, there's not much difference, especially in the top team. So if, for example, if Ferrari were to put a good run together, you'd hope that the momentum would carry on and they keep pushing. Whereas in Formula E, I suppose, you've got momentum for maybe this weekend, but going into the next weekend, that form book, Pico, I suppose it is out the window. I know I said earlier that it's a pivotal weekend, but now I'm kind of backtracking, thinking I don't know how it's pivotal, because you could gain a lot of points this weekend, right? But then you go, okay, we've got Monaco afterwards, where the hit might not be too bad, but when you get to Jakarta and Rome, okay, yeah, you picked up a lot of points, but if you're not good in those races, then your championship's over.
I think it especially helps when the races come and go. So for the last few races, we've had month breaks between the two of them. Sao Paulo was a month ago. Cape Town, amazingly, was 2 months ago. That sounds crazy. But then we had, at the start of the season, we had, 6 races in 9 weeks or something like that. Admittedly, one of them was a double header in Cape Town, but that's still Cape Town.
Saudi Arabia,
Why?
yeah.
Diriyah. Why did I say Cape Town?
I don't know. Last thing you said, I think.
Yeah. Good. Right. So, I'm really off the ball today, fellas. Looking forward to be back in Paddock. But yeah, if you're on a good run of form and you've got the races kind of next to each other, it's kind of easier to continue that form. Whereas the last few races, so I think that they're going to be different one to the next. Whereas we got Berlin this weekend, Monaco's in 2 weeks, but then we got another month gap to Jakarta, and then 3 weeks to Portland, 3 weeks to Rome, 2 weeks to London, then we're done. So it's going to be interesting, but because like some people, they win and they want to go on, and then other people just like, they have a terrible weekend and it's like, right, I need to step away. Or if you go into a break on a good form, then you're kind of happier over the break. You come into the next race better. But yeah, so yeah, what I'm saying is that it doesn't matter. Yeah. Exactly.
It's weird, isn't it? It's just weird. It's just weird because you think you got something like, okay, to use a football reference, right? Man City right now, they're chasing down Arsenal and momentum's with them, right? Arsenal's slipping up and, the momentum's with Man City and people are expecting Man City to overtake Arsenal. And it's not like we're saying that the momentum is now with Jaguar, right? We're not, it's like, it is with them, but that doesn't mean that they'll overtake. It just means that they've had a good weekend, but it could all come crashing down the next weekend. And you could say the same with football because they did. Man City could lose a game and it's all over. But that doesn't look likely. Whereas in Formula E terms, it's like, it looks more likely that things will slip in a sense. And even if with Formula One, if Ferrari, or even if Mercedes picked up some form, right? If Mercedes picked up some form in a couple of races, you'd expect that to continue, especially with George Russell and Lewis Hamilton in the car. You'd expect it to continue. And them to keep performing well. But I just, in Formula E, it just doesn't seem that ever does kind of work. But boys, we're coming towards the end of the show now. So it's that neck on the line, the Morons podcast. I really like that name that Pico said. We're going to predict, right? Double header, right? 2 races, boys. 2 races. Ed, I'm coming to you first. Who's winning race 1? Who's winning race 2?
All right, always a tricky one. I think I'm going to go a bit outside the box. I'm going to go with Sebastian Buemi to win race 1 in the Envision. And I think I'll probably go with Wehrlein to win race 2 for Porsche. But I don't know what Pico's going to pick. I guess different folks for different blokes, as he said earlier.
Pico?
I'm pretty sure I've got that saying right. I'm going to look it up later. Anyways, yeah. I was very tempted to say Ede Mortara and put my neck really on the line, considering how bad start Maserati have had. But I will say that I think Maserati will do all right this weekend. I think that this will be a good weekend for them. However, I will say that Van Dorn will win one of the races and the other race will be won by Da Costa. That's fairly safe, but who knows?
Yeah. I was so tempted. I was so tempted to just go, Norman Nato is going to win.
Yes, Stormin Norman.
Norman Nato is going to win one race. And Lucas de Grasse is going to come out of nowhere in a Mahindra and win a race. But no, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to say DS Penske. I'm going to go with this narrative that I've created in my head. And I love creating narratives in my head. DS Penske are going to be the team that catch up the most this weekend. And I think Van Dorn will win one race and Vern will win the other. So I'm going that DS Penske is going to be that team that claws it back. Boys, thank you so much for the show. Pico, enjoy Berlin.
I shall. More content over the weekend. Yeah, we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, look out.
And I'll
look
enjoy
out
the
for all
Kings. Cheers,
yeah,
Jack.
Look out for all the socials. Have a great one, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.